Well, this is a first for me, working on a Kawasaki Vulcan 750.
This is pretty much the worst video ever made.
Napoleon, like anyone can even know that.
Hello my friends, and welcome to Tom's Tinkering and Adventures. Today we're going to be working on this Kawasaki Vulcan 750 I got behind me here. A friend of mine picked this up. He's been looking for a street bike for a while, found this. Thought he got a pretty good deal, but I don't really know if he did or didn't because the bike needs some stuff. And of course he got tagged right away with paying $700 in back registration fees. Thank you very much, State of California, for that. Doesn't make sense that the new owner pays for the previous owner's mistakes, but it is what it is. We're not here to discuss California policies too much. The Vulcan 750 came out in about '85, I think it is. Kawasaki made this 750cc V-twin, Kawasaki's first V-twin. They did a pretty good job. It's a liquid cooled, has about 65, 70 horsepower, something like that, which is pretty decent for the size. Shaft drive. Yeah, you could say, you know, good looks, bad looks, whatever you think, but overall, supposed to be pretty good bikes and pretty reliable. But this one, it's been sitting for a while, I guess, and it runs, just doesn't run very good. Fuel leaks, so we are going to be removing the carburetors. Let's get started. I have already pre-staged some of this stuff, so the seat has to come off. There's two bolts right here. I think there's supposed to be a cover generally here. This is where your toolkit goes, I believe, but the cover is missing. Anyway, two bolts, 10mm. Seat comes off. Then the tank has got three bolts holding it. One right here, and then one right there. There's a little rubber piece that goes in there. One on the other side. There is a fuel sending unit wire that's right here, and of course remove the hoses over here on the fuel petcock valve, and then the tank will come off. I've already removed the little air filter pods over here. Those come off with 10mm bolts. That's these items here. There's two bolts that hold them, and a little rubber boot just fits into there. I started to remove some of the emissions systems from this motorcycle. As you can see, I've taken off this. I can't remember what Kawasaki calls this, PAIR or something like that, but it injects air into the exhaust system. A lot of times those systems kind of fail. They cause a lot of backfiring. Anyway, I'm not going to cover too much of that. There's probably some other videos out about that, but you can take that stuff off, but you have to make sure that you follow all the lines. And some of them, like this one that goes to the carburetor, some of them you have to plug, some of them you have to leave open. So if you're not familiar with that, you don't just leave the system on there. But I've done this a couple times. Now, like I said, I've never worked on one of these before, so I'm not 100% positive how to get these carburetors out of here, but you know, you just start with the basics, and that's going to be removing these boots off the back side of the carburetors first. And I don't know if they're linked together or if they're individual carburetors. I can't tell just yet. It kind of feels like they're linked together. Anyway, this is the right hand side. I'm going to do the same thing on the left hand side. And right and left side is always when you're looking at the back of a vehicle. I completely removed the boots from the back of the carburetor to the air box. They just pop out. But make sure you remember which side goes to what, because you may get confused putting them back in. And I've loosened up the intake boots, and I've got the carburetors loose, but here's one of the problems you run into on these things. It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. It's a very tight fit in here, and of course you got, you know, the V of the cylinder, so when you try to pull this one out, it's hitting against the boot on that side. If you try to pull it out this way, it's hitting against the boot on this side. Anyway, I'm going to struggle with it a little bit, and if I find a magic solution, I'll let you know, but really all you got to do is just try to be patient. If you need to say a couple of choice words, you can say them, but there's just not a lot of room. You know, this is the air box right here, It doesn't really come out. You can kind of move it a little bit. You get some coolant lines and some electrical lines in the way here. But you can see there's just not a lot of room. Well, I've worked on tougher bikes, but this one is definitely a pain in the butt. It is tight. I pulled it all out on this side, on the right-hand side. I had removed the rear intake boot, which was a struggle. Kind of had to lift the carburetor, push it to the left, pop that one out, and then vice versa to get the forward intake boot off, which I just laid right here for right now. And then still it was a pain to get out. The choke cable was difficult to remove, and I don't think it's going to be fun to get back on, along with the push throttle cable. It's a pain in the butt as well. So not looking forward to putting this back in. So that being said, I hope we do a good job on cleaning this up. While taking it out, some fuel was spilling out of it. I don't know how well you can see that, how yellow and nasty that fuel looks. It landed down here on my mat. The carburetors don't look bad externally, but I imagine that they're gummed up in the bowl. We will find out. These are some kind of funky looking carburetors too. Kind of an odd shape, I guess, just because of the way they sit in here. Well, I guess I thought I had seen quite a few carburetors in my day, but I've never seen something quite like this. We got kind of side-mounted bowls and half a dozen different linkages you had to take off to separate this carburetor from the other one on this side. Yeah, little tiny cotter pins and some plastic washers, so I'm going to have to hope I can get all that stuff back where it belongs. Yeah, there's one of the linkages. There's another one right here I took off underneath it. And across to this side. I don't know, I might not have even had to take these off. I was a little bit confused at first. But we can see quite a bit of dirt and trash in here. And everything looks a little nasty in here. Not awful, but dirty enough. So we're going to clean this all up. I imagine the other side looks the same. I had to take 1, 2, 3 screws off to get this bowl off. You can see it right here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, very interesting carburetor design. But I do have a rebuild kit, so we're going to clean this all up, and we'll let you know if I find something else interesting. Okay, we're on to the front carburetor. See, R was the back one, F is the front one. It's on the other side of here. And you can see all the gunk that's in there. Looks like rust, particles, and once again, it doesn't smell great. The jets are underneath here. I'll remove that. I'll show you that here in just a second. But it's just an interesting setup. Instead of the bowl being on the bottom of the carburetor, it's kind of on the side. So, really different. Like I said, never worked on one like this before. And there's our jets underneath that cover, like I said. Main jet, idle jet, or pilot jet, or whatever you want to call it. And more crud all throughout here. But besides being dirty, it didn't look too terrible. I'm sure if you've watched my channel and seen me mess with carburetors before, you've seen them quite covered in green gunk. These aren't awful, just looks like some rust. So I think what we're going to try to do is see about getting some fuel filters in line. We're putting her back together, and sometimes you get, new parts, and they don't work all that great. As you can see here, this O-ring for this float bowl, or whatever you're going to call it on this carburetor, just doesn't fit in here very good. So what I'm going to try to do, I've done this before, is I'm going to throw this in the freezer, and we'll see if that'll contract it a little bit. And it'll give me a chance to take a beer break. But sometimes you have to do stuff like that because these kits, like this one is not an OEM one. The parts are just not quite exactly right. And sometimes even the OEM stuff doesn't work great either. So You have to get creative, but I tell you what we are going to do before we put this carburetor back into that motorcycle. I'm going to set it into my vise probably as close to level as I can get it, and we're going to fill it full of fuel because I don't want to install this thing, seeing what a pain in the butt it is to get it in and out, or out. I haven't even tried to get it back in yet. I don't want to do that and then find out it's leaking in the bike. Let me tell you, it's a healthy struggle getting these things back in here. What I would recommend if you're working on this bike is to try to remember the orientation of these boots when they come out. Did I say that Canadian style? Boot? Yeah. Anyway, try to remember the orientation. Maybe you take like a silver Sharpie marker and mark, what side is up on them, because they're slightly angled like that. So I had to rotate these around to get the carburetors lined up. What a pain. Nice little bike, but definitely a pain to get that carburetor in there. I had a Vulcan 800. They redesigned this model in '95. They kept the bike, but they did a redesign, made it a little bit prettier, but it only had one carburetor, so it was much easier to work on, although the duals are probably more powerful. So anyway, now we got to get these boots, what you're talking about, get these boots in here, and then I have to finish up my elimination of that. Let me turn you upside down here. I made blank off plates for that. So I have that one rough cut. I got to finish that. But let me get all this stuff together, and then we'll throw the tank on and do a test run. There's been a good amount of behind-the-scenes stuff going on here. Drained the tank out. The fuel valve petcock had no filters on it. Usually there's filters inside the tank. There was none in there. So I scrounged some up, made them work, and the fuel that came out of the tank had some rust in it. The tank's got a little bit of rust. It's not terrible, but I went ahead and filtered the gas, put it back in there. Got the fuel on. I don't see any leaks. And air filters are on. Of course, this entire system has been disabled, so let's give her a shot. Nice! Seems all right. This bike was a bigger pain than I anticipated it being, but we got her done. I sweated a bit, but warm day, having a couple beers, work on a Kawasaki Vulcan, life's not too bad. I have a lot left to do. This bike needs tires, the fork seals, gotta do an oil change, all the usuals, but I don't think I'm gonna cover any of that stuff because, to be honest, I'm really sick of this bike. And it happens, sometimes there's bikes that are more fun to work on and some that are less. I don't really blame the bike, it's just the way it was designed. Okay, if you're enjoying my content, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and if you're not already a subscriber, please consider doing so. Thank you very much for watching. Get out there and find your adventure. Adios.